Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Simon, and in this video I'm going to cover the Unix Administration grade lab called System Identity and Basic Networking. So you needed to make sure that you did the practice lab first and attempt the grade lab as well before watching this video, because the grade lab is already past due, so if you haven't done it, you'll probably get a 0 on it. These videos are intended just to help you prepare for your test coming up. So it's basically showing you what you should have done to get a perfect mark on the grade lab and how to really understand these concepts. So if you have any questions, feel free to let me know. I don't cover the actual practice lab, so if you have questions about that, let me know. But that one's very straightforward. It's just, step by step. It's really the grade labs that are tricky, and that's why I'm making these videos, so that you can really understand how to do this. So with that being said, let's get into this grade lab. This one is I think pretty easy, because with your test it's going to be an open book test. You're going to be able to go back to your practice lab and use it, and for the most part in this lab you really just have to go to the practice lab and look at some of the things that you have to do and just kind of copy it word for word. For example, you're going to have to remove the udev's NIC memory file and remove the IP configuration file for ETH0. So you'll see that. I'll show you how to do it, but for the most part you're just basically following step by step. This one's not too bad in my opinion, but let's just do it. So first thing you need to know is what we're doing with this lab. We have WO1, which we're not going to change too much. Basically with WO1, we're just going to probably change a host file. And we're going to have SO1, and once again, we're not going to change too much with SO1, because SO1's fine. What we're really doing is creating a clone of SO1, and we're calling it SO5. And that means that we're going to have to change a lot of its configuration files. That means we're going to have to give it a new IP address. We're going to have to edit its host file. So there's several things that we have to do to complete this and make this function on its own based off cloning SO1. So again, make sure you do the practice lab. This will make so much more sense if you do the practice lab, but I'm going to go through it. We'll start with part A, which is building the environment. So first things first, let's get fresh copies of WO1 and SO1 in virtual machine, and then we're going to load them up and we're going to play with the host file. And it doesn't tell us what to do. It's basically letting us do our own way about getting this completed, but I'm going to show you what to do. It says requirements: SO5 has to be a clone of SO1, and SO5 must be in the host files of the servers. That's really the only requirements, but you're going to see there's a lot to this to make this work. So right now in VirtualBox I have WO1 and SO1 from the previous lab I did, so I want fresh copies. I'm going to right click and remove them and delete all the files, and then I'm going to go to File, Import Appliance, and search for the OVA file that we were supposed to download at the beginning of the course. And here it is. This is the OVA file. We're going to double click on it and hit next, and do whatever you want with this. Again, with the settings it's up to you, but these settings are fine. You can hit import, or you can increase the WO1 virtual machine if you want. The CPU can go from 1 to 2, and the RAM can go to 1024 to 2048, but that's probably the only difference that you'll see worth making. So when you're happy with what you want to have for your settings, just click import. And while it's loading, like I said, a lot of this is going to basically just be you going back to the practice lab and looking at what you're going to have to do. I'm going to show you a few things that you should do right off the bat, which is basically prepare SO1 and W1 to work properly and connect properly. Make sure that's working first, and then we're going to shut down SO1 and we're going to clone it, which can take some time, but again, I'll show you all of this. So we've got these machines ready here. I'm going to start both of them. As I always say, if you don't have a great machine, start each of them individually. Make sure that one loads before you load the other, because it can actually slow down your machine, but my machine's not too bad, so I'm going to do both at the same time just to save some time. So I'll put SO1 up here and W1 down here, because we're going to mostly be working with SO1. And we're just going to wait for it all to load. There we go. So SO1 is right here, and this guy cannot access the internet, and that's okay, because when we go into the grade lab we're going to see that SO1 and SO5 are on the blue network. It doesn't have any access to the internet at all. It does have access to each other and W01, but W1 is the only one that's on the black network as well, which has access to the internet. We can also see what the IP addresses are supposed to be for both. So SO1 is 10.1.1.20, SO5 will be 10.1.1.60, and W01 should have 10.1.1.10. It also has a DHCP client that will give it automatic IP address that can connect to the internet. So we don't have to worry too much about W01 other than we need to make sure that we change the host file so it recognizes SO5 even though we don't have it yet. So I'll show you how to do that. You're going to go into Alice, type in user pass, and you're going to log in. Go to applications, system tools and terminal. And then let's log in as root, just because we want to be root. And the root password is admin pass. And now we're going to say vi etc hosts. Okay. So as you can see, this is a file that already exists, and we have a bunch of information here. And what we have is basically a name for this IP address. So 10.1.1.10 is called W01. And 10.1.1.20 is called SO1. So that means if I ping the name SO1, it knows to search for 10.1.1.20. And if I ping W01, it knows to ping the address 10.1.1.10. And I'll show you how that works. But we also want to add SO5. I haven't created it yet, but I'm going to put it in here just to get it ready. And SO5, we know the IP address will be 10.1.1.60 because of the diagram. So that's what I'm going to put in there. So I hit I to insert, enter, 10.1.1.60, space, 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 SO5. There we go. Hit escape, :WQ to save it. And that's it. That's all you had to do for W01. Now, let's just make sure that we can actually ping SO1 and make sure SO1 is pretty good. So we're going to say ping -C for count, and it's up to you what number you can use. I use usually 3, and we're going to say 10.1.1.20 because that's SO1, right? And good, we can do that. Now remember what I was saying. If we would have said ping, and let's say 2 now, SO1, it still knows to check for 10.1.1.20 because of that host file that we had where it basically gave that IP address a name of SO1. So that's why we changed the host file. The host file allows us to basically make short names that are attached to IP addresses because it's so much easier to say ping-C3 SO1 than it is to memorize the IP address every single time and write that all out. So this is good. In terms of W01, we don't have to do anything further just yet, so we can actually minimize this guy. Let's go into SO1. So let's say root admin pass, and let's do the exact same thing. So let's say vi etc hosts. We get this file, and we're going to edit it, and we're going to add an entry that says 10.1.1.60, and that's going to be for SO5. And save that, and we're going to just clear, but let's ping W01. There we go. So we can see that it's pinging properly. We can see that we have an IP address of 10.1.1.10 that comes up when we ask for W1. So that is working perfectly. Now let's just try SO5. And we wait, and it's not going to recognize anything because we don't have anything. Destination host unreachable. So first of all, there is no virtual machine that has that IP address yet, and we haven't cloned anything. So we have to basically create this almost from scratch. The only difference is that we're going to cheat a little by cloning it first from SO1, but that means we're going to have to change these settings of SO1 so that it fits these settings for SO5. So to do that, what we have to do is we have to basically shut down this machine. So how we're going to do that is say shut down -H now. And there we go. Now we can see W1 is still running, which is fine. SO1 is powered off. We're going to right click on it, and we're going to say clone. Now I like to go in expert mode, that way you know you're getting a full clone and we're going to clone everything. We're going to want to reinitialize the MAC address of all the network cards, and then we're going to call this guy SO5, but the reality is this part isn't really as important as renaming it in the actual virtual machine. So if you mess this up, this little part, that's not a big deal. It's not getting scripted. Like the script that you have to run doesn't actually check for this name. It's the name inside the virtual machine that you have to check. But I just like to know SO5 is there, and we'll click clone, and we just wait now. So that wasn't too long because SO1's a core install, or basically it's a very minimal install. So now that we have that, we can load SO1 and we can load SO5 so that both of them are running. So with SO1, once it loads, you can minimize it because everything that you had to do for SO1 is done. You don't have to worry about him at all. We are good to go. It's only SO5 that we really have to change things around. So now that SO1's loaded, I'm going to minimize it and I'm going to just expand SO5. And let's log in. So everything right now is the exact same as SO1. So if we say root admin pass, we can log in. But you see right here it says root at SO1. That means if I say host name, it's going to say SO1. We don't want that. We want the host name to be SO5. So how do we change that? Well, there's a couple ways of doing it, but if you go into the practice lab, what you can do right now is basically check here. There is a system file under etc/sysconfig/network where we can change the host name. So that's the first thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to say vi, because we have to use the vi editor, etc sysconfig network. And we'll see everything's here already for us. So all we have to do is hit I to insert and change the host name from SO1 to SO5. And save. And now you'll see, if I clear this, I'm still SO1. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to reboot. So what we're going to do is just say shutdown -R for reboot or restart now. And we'll wait for this to load. But the good news is now our virtual machine recognizes this as SO5. So that's the first thing down, which is really, really good. Okay, so see, it's SO5. If I go into root admin pass and I say host name, I am SO5. So that is the first thing down, which is perfect. So now what we have to do is we have to change the IP address and we have to configure it. If you go into here, I'm going to show you really quickly. If you go into IP link, you're going to see something that's kind of odd. You're going to see something that says ETH1. But if you go into your actual lab, you're going to see that we're supposed to have ETH0. So this doesn't really work the way that we want it to, because right now ETH1 is what we got. We want ETH0. So what are we going to do to change that? Well, remember I kind of mentioned this a little bit further back. Where are we? Where's the guy? Right here. This is where we're going to basically reset the NIC cards and what it remembers on the system. Because right now, the way that it recognizes this system, it thinks that basically it has ETH1 because SO1 had ETH0. So it's basically not like it's basically wrong. We don't want this. We want ETH0, not ETH1. So how we're going to show the system that we're going to need ETH0 and not ETH1 is we're going to run these two commands. We have to remove one file and then remove another. So you're just literally writing this word for word. The very first one is remove etc udev, and then it's rules.d, and then 70 persistent net dot rules. Okay, and then we're going to remove another file, which is etc sysconfig, and then network dash scripts if config dash eth0. and now we're going to reboot again. So shutdown -R now. So what that's going to do is basically get rid of any entry that it saw previously for ETH0, and it's going to say, oh, we don't have anything in ETH0. So when I start up this machine, I'll say that my NIC card is on ETH0. We're going to use just ETH0 because that has nothing, and that's the next available slot where we can put something on there, and we're not going to use ETH1. So that's what we want. So if I go back in here, root admin pass, and we see, or we write down IP link, now you can see ETH1 is changed to ETH0, and that's exactly what we want. But it's still not perfect. Just because it's ETH0 doesn't mean we have the IP address that we actually want. So what we need to do is let's look at our IP address. IP space ADDR will allow you to see what you have. So when I look at this, I don't even see an IP address. So we have to fix that up. We have to create something for that. So what we're going to do is right down here, we're going to create a file called etc/sysconfig/network-scripts/ifconfig-eth0. Okay, so let's do that. VI, and write that whole long thing out, and make sure we say ifconfig-eth0. And when you go in here, it's blank, and that's normal, so that's okay. What we're going to do is we're going to basically create everything based on this. So everything that you see here is what we want to put down. The only difference is that IP adder should be 10.1.1.60. So let's put that in exactly as it is. So device equals ETH0, so it knows where it's going to be putting this IP address and all of that. On boot means make sure you automatically do this on boot every single time. Boot proto is basically saying, do you want to use DHCP? And we don't. We want this to be a static IP address. We don't want it to be automatically given to us. So we're going to say none. There is no DHCP server essentially. IP adder equals 10.1.1.60. And then the net mask is going to be your subnet mask, and we'll leave it the same. Save it, and once you do that, what we have to do is bring up the interface. So just because you've edited this file doesn't mean it's working all of a sudden. So how you do that is through this command here, if up eth0. Okay, so if up eth0, enter, and we're going to wait. And we didn't get any errors, so that's really good. What you can do as well is you can also say service network restart. That also will allow you to basically bring up everything. Okay, so that's good. So basically we have the host name down as SO5 now. We have the IP address as 10.1.1.60, and we've basically made sure that the interface is up so it's recognized by all of the virtual machines. Now you're going to see in your actual practice lab that it's going to tell you to change or update the host file, but remember I did that first before we cloned the actual virtual machine. So we kind of did something in advance that helped us out, because if I say vi etc hosts, you're going to see I already have all the hosts that I need in there. So we just were a little bit smart about how we did this. We did this first, then cloned it so that we didn't have to do this step again. So we can simply escape and get out of here. We don't have to save anything because we didn't do anything. Clear. And now what we can do is we can test to see if everything works. So let's test. Let's say ping-c, let's say 3, and let's say SO1, because we have SO1 loaded right here. And we'll hit enter, and there we go. We can connect. Remember on SO1 we couldn't connect at one point? I don't think I typed in that password right. So let's do it again. There we go. So let's just make sure that this one can connect to SO5 now. Now it can, so that's perfect. Now let's try pinging W01. There we go. This one should be able to do W01 as well because we checked that already. But now let's go to W01 and make sure that W01 can connect as well. So what we're going to do is say, let's first clear this, make it nice, and we're going to say ping-c, and we'll just say 2. And SO1, that worked before, so that shouldn't have been new to us, but SO5 now works. So everything is good to go. So the last thing that we have to do is we have to run a script. So when we go here, it basically says you're going to get the grade script, unzip it, and then we're going to send it to SO5. And SO5 is going to be where we're going to run it and then send it back to W01. So let's go here. SO1 I can minimize because I don't need that anymore. And we're just going to wait for this to connect. And I'm going to show you what it should look like if you did everything right for your grade lab. While this loads. Once again, if you have any questions about this, please let me know. I know this is a really odd one. It's not too long, but it feels like there's a lot that I did, and you're probably sitting there saying, I don't know. When I look at this practice lab, it just seems like there's just so much to it, and then all I really did was adjust basically 3 files. I get that, so don't worry. Send me a message if you're confused, but in terms of what you had to do for this lab, that was it. It's really not that complicated. Most of the stuff that you see in the practice lab is just showing you how you can check things. And basically, for example, here's 3 things where it's just pinging. So it looks long, but there's really not a lot to do, and it is as simple as what I just showed you. But let's just run the script like I said, and I'll show you what your output should have been. So we'll go to Dropbox, and once that loads, we'll scroll down to this guy, and we will download that. And let's go into the downloads folder, so CD downloads. We'll unzip that host file, and then we're going to say scp the host file, but we want the script, not the zip, and we're going to say root of SO5 at 10.1.1.60, because that's the IP address of SO5, remember, and we're going to put it in its temp folder still. And it says a bunch of stuff that you don't have to worry about. Basically, you just want to say yes, we want to continue, and we're going to put in the admin pass, and there we go. So now it's sent it over to SO5, and we can check that really quickly by going into SO5. Clear this. Let's go into temp ls, and we can see the host script is right there. So we're going to run it by hitting ./host, and you can just hit tab, enter, and it ran. So now we'll say scp, and it should be SO1. Actually, I wonder if it's SO5. Probably is SO5. There we go. SO5 tab, there's your HTML report that we need, and we're going to send it back over to root of the W01 machine, which is 10.1.1.10, colon, we'll send it to the temp folder, admin pass. Let's go back here. Let's go cd temp ls. We should see the SO5 report right there. We'll say Firefox SO5. And there we go. So we can shut this guy down. Let's look at this report. Basically, it's going to check what host name are you. We are 5. So we ran the script on SO5 and it recognized the host name as SO5, so you get 2 points for that. Then it's going to say the IP address, and it's going to look. And the first thing it's going to look for is, do you have ETH0 as your card? And that was worth 1 point. It's also going to look for the actual IP, and you can see that right here is 10.1.1.60, so that's perfect. So there's your 2 points. Then you're going to see ping SO1 by name. So what that means is it's going to use the ping command on SO1. It's not actually going to use the IP address, and it's checking to see if your host file, that etc/host, was updated properly. And as you can see, we received this and there was no packet loss, which means it was successful, so that was really good. We're going to ping W01 by name, and it did the same thing. It checked the host file, made sure W1 goes to the right IP address, and it pinged it successfully because we had no packet loss. And then we're going to ping ourselves by name. So it's checking to see if the host file had our own name. And you can see right here, it was successful as well. So this is how you get 100% on this grade lab. And I hope it helped you. Like I said, I know this is a really weird lab because it seems like there's a lot to do, but the reality is you're just changing the host name. You're just getting rid of the ETH1 configuration files to make sure that you're actually using ETH0, and then changing that one ETH0 file where you can change the IP address. So it's not too bad, but again, ask me if you have any questions. Hopefully this helped you, and hopefully it'll help you for your test if this is on your test. Alright, so thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.